Hello, my name's Ryan Clement. Welcome to my YouTube channel, or if you want to listen to a podcast, welcome to the podcast. You're in for a treat today. Cllr Michelle Simmons-Safo, wonderful person, wonderful stories. She is a social worker, a counselor, and a poet, and much, much more. You're in for a treat. Michelle, thank you very much for agreeing to do this. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show. Social
Honor to
worker.
be here.
Oh, great. Thank you. Social worker, poet, and counselor. Now, I know if we are fortunate enough and blessed enough, we'll hear at least one or two of your poems.
Oh,
If
you
we're
will.
fortunate enough and if we're blessed enough. Now, I've done some
Yes.
research on you, and I've seen that you have a close bond with your family. I saw a
Yes.
video of your mother talking about how she came from a particular island and how she came here. So you tell us your story and tell us about your heritage.
My name is Michelle Simmons-Safo. I was Simmons before I married. I was born in December of 1968. My parents are from a very small island called St. Vincent in the Grenadines. It is described as the gem of the Antilles. And the first time I visited there, I was 15 years old, and I was absolutely blown away with its beauty and its simplicity, and knowing that it's part of my legacy. And I questioned, Mommy, what are you doing here in Britain? She said, we come here to tile, we come to tile and make a better way for you.
Yeah.
Now, my mum is a woman of great substance. She's the one who made the journey first, and then my dad joined her. They were sweethearts in St. Vincent. My dad was a policeman, and my mother was a nurse. And my dad and my parents actually met when my dad had a prisoner, and he was taking him to hospital, and he saw my mom, and he was mesmerized by her. And she he asked her for a glass of water for a prisoner, but he knew he didn't want to give her a glass of water, but he just wanted to talk to her.
Right.
And my grandmother was so strict, she wouldn't let them go out. My mother is the 10th of 11 children. So it's really amazing that her mother is a twin. They're two twin sisters, and both of them had 11 children each. So
Wow.
between these two women, they have 22 children. And my
Yes.
mother is the 10th of them. So she
Wow.
had quite a sheltered lifestyle. So she came to Britain. She was very bold in coming here. She said she wanted to escape the clutches of being so strict. So she knew my dad from the Caribbean. She came over here in 60. He joined her in 64. They married in 65, and then all of us arrived. Now, the treasures that my mother has bestowed in me has made me in the woman that I am today. So at her feet and on her lap, I had learned a moral compass, the ability to push back and to challenge. And she used to say, "You're not nobody's doormat." I said, "No." And she had so much struggle. And one thing that she told me was, your education is the key. The pen is mightier than the sword. And the riches that I have to give you, that no one will be able to take away, is what I bestow in you. He said, Michelle, I can give you houses, properties, and everything. Somebody can take it away from you. But what I press down in your spirit and your soul, that will make you mobile economically and geographically. And she is not wrong. So she has been a major influence in my life. And I'm so glad she's still here. She's 89.
Wow. Good.
Although everybody will say, you are the original daddy's girl, because I am a daddy's girl. And when my dad passed away, the first thing everyone said was, how is Michelle going to cope? Because I was born around the time that my dad's mother passed away. So she passed away in 67, and I was born in 68. So yeah, so my father and I were really, really close. But I think as my father has passed, and I've got even more richness from my mother, there's lots of things. That woman, she's a complete confident. I had a friend that was pregnant and had a child in her teens. Everybody was shocked because she hid it. And I said, you had a baby? She said, yeah. She said, didn't you know? I said, how would I know? You never said anything. She said, yeah, but I told your mum. I went to my mum. I said, Mommy, So and so was had a baby. And you never told her. She said it wasn't my business to tell you. My job was to console her, to encourage her, and to do what I could do as a mother to ensure that she and her child would be safe and well. And there's so many anecdotes that I can give you, but I would say that my sister said the other day, it's mummy's kindness that has kept us. Because the kindness that she's given to the community, especially to other Black women, that kindness supersedes human understanding. Where she could have made financial gain, she chose not to do it. When the Black women were over here, I'll give you two incidents. There was a friend of hers who was fleeing domestic violence. And at the time, um, my mum had leased a house, but there was, in those days in the Caribbean, coming over here, we had different families in different rooms. It was a Victorian house. And this lady had fled. And at the time, we were only in two rooms. And this time it was two children, two adults and four children. And my mother let Auntie Holly come to our house with her two children and set her up to go to America. And it was when I was getting married. I didn't even know that story. This lady came back. She'd been in England. She said, I'm cooking for your wedding. I said, you don't have to do that. She said, if you know that kindness your mother showed me when I was on my face, and she cooked up a storm. She came
Wow.
to my wedding with food. And then the
Wow.
following Sunday, she came, and Auntie Holly, she had it rough. But
Yeah.
the kindness, my mum says, kindness, how quickly it's shown, how easily it acts, how long it is remembered, and how abundantly it pays itself back.
Wow.
So the
Wow.
currency that we have in life is kindness, really. It's not okay, we have to have comfort because we're not
Mm.
we have to work to earn a living. But
Yes.
fundamentally, I've seen some really miserable millionaires in my day. So yes, my mother is a phenomenal woman. She's still got all her strength, Ryan. I took her
Good.
to a play yesterday and
Yeah.
she's walking around. There's no sign of illness. Thankfully, there's no dementia. She's still telling me off. She still
Of
thinks I'm her
course.
little girl.
Of course.
Michelle, listen
Oh
to
yeah.
me.
Oh yes, of
Say,
course.
mommy, you got to remember, mate, I'm your daughter, not your child. She said, where we come from, you'll always be my child. I said,
That's
okay, then.
right. That's absolutely right. And well said, mother. Well said. I lost my
Yeah,
mother 6, 7 years ago, and I miss her every day. I really do. And I
yeah,
wish I'd made the video that your mother made, just so
yeah,
those lasting memories. But no,
yes,
I mean, no matter what I've achieved in my short life or in a long life now, but I know mother,
yeah,
bring mother up and she'll just put me straight. Counsel
yes.
or no counsel, 3 degrees or no
Yeah, they
three
don't care
degrees.
about that.
No, 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 no,
My
exactly.
mum says, come now. And I think that that is the common thread
Hmm.
that we have perhaps lost. I knew my mum was the boss. I knew my parents were the boss.
Yes,
I
yes,
knew they were the boss.
yes.
It was not debatable. I
No.
recall my dad used to say, if the police pick you up and it is not for
Oh
defending
my
yourself,
goodness. Oh my, yeah,
tell
yeah.
them you're an orphan. Nobody's coming for you. I said, what do you mean, daddy? He said, you are an orphan. If
Yeah.
it's for teething, we're not
Oh yeah,
coming.
yeah, yeah, yes,
We're not
absolutely.
coming for you. You're an orphan.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
recall when the 85 riots happened in Tottenham,
Yeah.
and some of the people, at the time I was 16 and my sister was 18.
Yeah.
And some of the people in the community were saying, come on, come on. There's a lot of looting. Let's go down there.
Mm-mm.
We said, we know who our mother is. We
Ex-
ain't going a place.
Exactly.
Yeah? We're
Exactly.
not going nowhere. And I think it wasn't that my mum, she was a teacher and a nurse before, so she knew how to cultivate our minds. And
Mm.
I recall saying to her, I said, Mummy, you had a tall order growing us up in Tottenham and expecting university doctors and lawyers. She said, I had your minds and I played with your minds. And I knew if I do that, you could be what God has called you to be in the land of the living. And I
Mm.
wanted you to know that society, though they put embargoes on you, you had a higher calling. So she told us all of this. She told us She told me the prettiest lily grows by the muddiest bank.
Wow.
Therefore, Tottenham might have been full of mud. I was her pretty lily, and I was going to grow and get all the nutrients from there to be able to bloom to be the woman that God had called me to be in the land of the living.
Yes. Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
I see that, Tottenham is a beautiful place. Fundamentally, I did lead a bit of a parallel existence because I was so protected. You
Yeah.
know,
Yes.
my mum was very strict on when we came in. We used to sneak out to go out. I remember the first time my sister took me out she took me to a place called Oasis in Hackney. Ryan, I didn't even know what was going on. I was 15 and she and her friend, Deborah, taken me. And so they dressed me up because, I was too young, but they needed to get me in. And then we left. And then we saw my mum coming up the road. Deborah said, run. Had to run along the road, hide behind the cars, wait for my mum to get in. We'd already put the bed there, put blankets on so that they'd think we were sleeping in the bed. Listen, mate. So we couldn't, my mum wanted to protect us, and she
Yeah.
did get university graduates because all four of her children are university graduates,
Wow.
regardless of going in Tottenham. I
Wow.
recall, being the only black girl in my class, but it's her seeds and her words helped me
Yes.
when I was facing very difficult things. Um, I became pregnant when
Mhm.
I was doing my second year, my psychology degree
Right.
at Middlesex University, and I was the only. Can you imagine being the only black person in the class? Some of the classes doing my research methods, and not only that, I've become now pregnant and the only black thing. So already I felt, think they said to me, "Oh, do you want to defer?" I said, "I have no disease. I will not be deferring. I'll be continuing my classes." So I
Yeah.
did my classes, and I remember one white lecturer, and I share this with everybody to encourage them and let them see that, it's sometimes you have to use your experiences to be teachable moments for others. And there was an occasion that I went to give my lecture papers in, because those days it wasn't no emails, you had to hand your work in.
Mm.
So I'm walking up there handing in my work, and this white lecturer says, "Miss Simmons, what are you doing pregnant in the middle of term?" And I said to him, "Oh, sir, could never happen to you because you don't have sex with your wife from June to September." And he said, the whole class roared with laughter. And I thought, "You're coming for the wrong chick." Yeah. And from that day, that man used to put little notes in my Beasley, because those you didn't have emails, you just had a filing cabinet. So he used to put notes in there to see whether I was okay.
Yeah.
So on my final year, my daughter, I delivered her on the 2nd of September, and I had to go back on the 12th. So she was 10 days old.
Wow.
So I went to enroll, and I saw my lecturer, and he said, "Michelle, how are you?" I said, "I'm fine." He said, "Oh, you've got a beautiful girl." He said, "I want to reveal to you, I did have sex with my wife from June to September because I have a son that's 4 days older than your daughter." And we just laughed at it.
Oh, lovely. What a
So,
story.
so, so he, and it's about, uh, because my mum gave me the quick wit. I
Yes.
think we
Yeah.
all have that, all of us as our
Yeah.
children.
Yes. Yeah.
And I wasn't able to crumble in that moment because I could have crumbled.
Yeah.
I could have crumbled. It could have been a really bad experience for me,
Yes.
but I was nobody's victim.
No.
As
No.
my mom always say, right church, wrong pew. You're sitting next to the wrong.
Oh, I love it. I love it when our parents'
You ready for
generation can
me?
have
I'm
these
ready, I'm
sayings.
ready, I'm ready. You
Yeah.
have to be
Yeah.
ever ready. You have to have a value. I keep telling everyone, value yourself at a very young age. Could have been about 5 or 6. My mom told me a scenario. She said, "Michelle, if you walk into a shop and you see a bottle of chocolate or a very valuable item, and you know it's worth £100, but you can put £1 or 50p on it, and you can walk into there and buy it, wouldn't you do it?" I said, "Of course I would, mummy. I'd be running in there with my £1 and buy it." He said, "Exactly. So if you don't price yourself, others will price you, and the value that they put on you, you will not like it. So you have to put a price on yourself, let people raise to your standards, and not demean yourself to a standard that you do not find acceptable for you. And from that very early age, Ryan, I knew my worth. So there'll be lots of things that I don't sign up to
Yeah.
because I ain't selling my soul, you know, and I'm not compromising my dignity, my self-respect, and I do have a moral compass, you know, and that is what has sustained me through some really difficult times, you know.
Yeah.
So
Good.
yeah, this is a woman I admire a lot.
Good.
And
Good.
when
Good.
it was the 75 years of the Windrush,
Yes.
I wanted to interview her, and I think that's a mistake that I think after my father died, I wish I'd captured his voice a lot more. Because
Yes.
although I have them, I didn't do anything concrete or specific. And so when it was 75 years of the Windrush, I decided, you know what? I'm going to celebrate not only the Windrush generation, but my mum in a way that will be embedded in history.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm a poet anyway. I call myself the political poet.
Wow. Wow.
Because I talk about some really controversial and hard-hitting issues. And so I decided to write this poem, and it's called Bound for Britain. And it
Right.
charts my mother's history through
Right.
coming to Britain from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I I read it in the Houses of Parliament.
This, I say, in tribute to my mother, but it's to many men, women that gave their youth to this country. So, this poem is called Bound for Britain.
I read it on LBC. I have read it in the schools in Hackney where I work,
Wow.
and
Wow.
they're now using it as teachable material.
Wow. Well
So
done. Well done. Well, I did
that
say from
is,
the outset, if we are
oh,
blessed and fortunate enough, are we blessed
yes,
and fortunate enough to hear
yes,
a poem?
yes, you are. Sorry, I got a bit of a cough,
That's fine. That's
but
fine.
I'm
When
going
you're
to,
ready. When you are
oh,
ready.
yes, I'm going to read to you Bound for Britain.
Thank you.
And it reads, and SVG is St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So that's the abbreviation. And it bound for Britain on a ship and a prayer. New discoveries awaiting me there. My sweetheart remaining in SVG, but that would never hinder me. I have tenacity in my genealogy. My ancestors' whispers remain in my ears. Sail on the boat of ambition and arrive safely on the shores of success. No risk, no gain is my ancestors' terrain. Bound for Britain with a suitcase and a hold-all. 1960, I stood proud and tall, though inside I felt tiny and small. Tears in my father's eyes as I left the shores. My mother's fears and prayers also laced with tears. I waved goodbye. I could not cry. I was 24 and I dared to stare at the island disappear. I was bound for bountiful Britain. On the ships, we made friends for life. Our Caribbean cousins from neighboring shores all aboard. St. Lucia, Grenada, Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua, Guyana, and Dominica. We knew in our hearts the only thing that set us apart was where the slave ships docked, as we were all African from the start. 14 days and the bellows rolled. We swayed over shores, but we kept the course. We stopped and stared on European lands, Barcelona, Cannes, Italy, and Switzerland. Then we disembarked in France and jumped on the ferry bound for the motherland. Our dreams intact despite the burdens on our back. We arrived in Southampton on that cold morn, shivering and cold, for older delight, we'd accomplished our plight. We had sailed on the boat of ambition, and we'd arrived safely on the shores of success. Little did we know that was the beginning of our fight against racism, an uncharted domain. 61 Habert Road, Battersea was my first home. Under the wings of my uncle, I had prospects and protection, but I soon wanted to go it alone. Venturing out for rooms to rent, I was met with no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. Then I soon realized what I had in store. I secured a room with a rough landlord who would break the gas meter and take cash for good measure. Alan Craig's daughter could not abide with such dishonesty and reckless behavior. So I took my flight. I leased a home in my own right from a Jewish family who understood my fight. I work not guided by my education or skills. They did not require that on the conveyor belts in the factories or the tills. In SVG, I was a teacher and a nurse, but over here in Britain, they appeared not to care. My sweetheart, Oswald Ferdinand Simmons, joined me in 64. We married in 65, and then the children arrived. They came so fast, I did not have time to catch my breath and gasp. God blessed me with 4, each with their own needs, talents, and wants. I prayed every day I'd have the strength to guide them God's way. Finances were scarce, the pound needed to stretch. Corned beef and rice would have to make do. I had a mortgage to pay, children to feed, money to send, and nothing to spend on me. No lavish clothes. I only had one shoe. I had to make do. Mend and make do was our mindset by day and by night. The way the wages were spent, we could account for every cent. 2 and 6 for rent, that was well spent. A room with lino on the floor was a very good score. Money for the gas meter, paraffin for the heater, Saturday Wrigley Road to drag your load, and money a month to send back home. We dare not leave our families destitute and alone. I worked my fingers to the bone. My children quickly grew. One after the other, through university they flew. I stood back and watched in delight. I'd accomplished my plight. They had gained what I could never obtain. No risk, no gain is now the next generation's terrain. I was bound for Britain on big dreams and prayers. The good Lord has seen it fit for me to remain here. Bountiful Britain, your streets were not paved with gold, but the treasures I secured through love, friendship, hardship, joy, and laughter. I have no regrets. I have faced many tests. I have built many nests, and now I'm taking my rest. The Windrush generation, they've done their best, and now we hand the baton on to the next generation to do the rest. Mummy, I salute you.
Wow, wow, beautiful. You did that very well with a cough as well. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. That's so beautiful. So, so beautiful. And you did that with a cough as well. You braved it through. Wonderful, wonderful. In fact, I was picturing a cough that that few on that journey might have had from the hot Caribbean. And can you imagine arriving here in a November or December when it's freezing cold. But no, you know what? I absolutely love it, because many of us know about the end, about being here, and our parents came from the Caribbean. What we don't know is about that journey, leaving that place that you've only known to come to the motherland, how it was described at the time. And so you've catalogued a journey that I think all British people to be aware of. So thank you very much for that. Now I know, like Maya Angelou, as she catalogues in I Know What the Caged Bird Sings, that
Yeah.
you have also been to Ghana. Do you want to tell us
Oh,
about
yes.
your experience?
Yeah. Ghana was a monumental experience for me. It was a place of, excuse me, joy, sorrow, education, and it brought a sense of completeness. My father grew up with his maternal grandparents. And his grandmother used to say to him, her mother was called Emma Thomas. And Emma Thomas couldn't really speak English. And she used to say in August, the people in his household in the village would have party. And Emma Thomas would say, today everybody is lady. I didn't know the connection, but I just heard the story. And when I worked it out, my grandmother would have been born, my dad's mother would have been born in the early 1900s. Yeah. My my great grandmother would have been born in the 1800s. And my great great grandmother, Emma Thomas, would have been the last influx of slavery, went to the Caribbean. And when I went to Ghana for the first time, that was in 2002 with my then 9, almost 10-year-old daughter. And we went to Elamina Castle. And they talked about the emancipation of slavery and it being in August. And Ryan, I wept. I wept because then that story had had its completeness. And it had been, the thread was complete. And I was crying and I was going out through the door of no return because they take you through the door of no return. And then they turn you around and bring you back. And I remember my little daughter saying, Mommy, we're not slaves anymore. We're princesses. Stop crying. Stop crying. But there's something spiritual that happens there. And when I came back through the door of return, I went straight to the book because there's a book that they give you that you can write in. And I boldly wrote Emma Thomas's name there. And I said, your daughter has returned. We are not lost.
Wow.
I've managed to come back.
Wow.
You know, since then I got married to a Ghanaian man who I met in England actually, that had nothing to do with going to Ghana. And so we've been back subsequent times and we have 3 children. And the first of our children is a girl. Her name's Abena. She's born on a Tuesday. Well, her name's Nana Abena Ohiniwa, actually. And the first time that I took her back, I remember going to her maternal side of her family's home. And the women, as soon as they got her, they took her and they washed her face with water. They said, we have to wash her by the stream. And I said, why is that? She said, in slavery, we lost so many people and we washed their face when they return so that they will never forget how to come back home. So these are 2 prominent things that have happened in my journey that have linked me to the transatlantic slave trade. And it's made it a real thing. And the last thing is, about 2 years ago, I did my ancestry DNA test. And you can see it's such a mix there. So I'm predominantly Nigerian. There's some Ghanaian. There is Irish, which is a lot. Because I knew about, my great-grandmother on my mother's father's side, she was Irish. And there's even Norwegian, Ryan. Thinking, where do we get that from?
Yeah.
And so there was a Ghanaian guy, his name is Ernest. He contacted me from America and said, you're my cousin. And I saw I was his cousin. And he thought that I was Ghanaian because of my surname. And I
Yeah.
said, no, I'm from the Caribbean. And we both cried because we knew there and then that we have a common ancestor who
Yes.
survived the transatlantic slave trade.
Yes. Yes.
Because Ernest is actually Ghanaian. He's just gone, he's emigrated to America. But I am the descendant of the transatlantic slave trade. So
Right.
then he started speaking to me as we start, because we've been talking now for about 2.5 years. There's so many similar characteristics. He is into the arts, he's into poetry, you know, he is so much like me. He's a lot like me. And then he told me that he's from the Ashanti, and
Right.
they are a royal people. So
Mhm.
then he was able to tell me about his grandmother, the stool that she occupies, and my husband has spoken to him as well. So there's someone in my ancestry that I have a connection with. So these are the things that we are all African from the start. And I think that a lot of people from the Caribbean, I'd like to see a massive exodus of us being really, really connected with our roots, so that all the suffering, I know I'm not under any illusions that I am standing on the shoulders of greatness. There's someone in my lineage that, number one, survived the disease-infested belly of a ship, that has gone through slavery, been beaten, you know, mutilated, all those things, raped and pillaged, for me to come out at the end. And that is why I take my journey in this world very seriously, because I know that I am the fruit of their sacrifice. My mom, yes, I could see a tangible sacrifice that she made there. But when I think about my genealogy and how I even got to this place, I don't take nothing for granted. And that's why, Ryan, I struggle with anybody to disrespect me. I can't do it, because I know the struggle that they got to do here and what they had to put up with. So any way that I can push back to make sure that the next generation does not have to drink from the poison chalice that I've had to endure, then I will make sure that that happens. Comes what may, regardless of, you know, if I perish, I perish. But that's the deal, you
Wow.
know. And I
Wow.
think that
Wow.
Maya Angelou, one of her beautiful sayings that I really hold on to is, when you are healed, go out and heal someone else.
Wow.
When
Wow.
you receive your healing, go and heal someone else. And my mission is that, although I have encountered awful racism, both at home, school, and play, I am going to make sure that as I go through my life and I get my healing, my mission is to make sure other people are healed.
Yes. 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 Lovely, beautiful, and still I rise, says Maya
Yes,
Angelou as well. So tell
yes.
us, why psychology degree and why social work?
Well, psychology was mainly out of curiosity and fascination, Ryan.
Mm.
When I used to walk in Tottenham and I see people on the streets, I used to wonder, how did they end up here? Why is their story different? Why do people think differently? How have people had different experiences? So I did my A levels and I flunked them, actually. Even though I did politics, law, I did very well in sociology. And I didn't get the grades that I wanted to. This is before I had the baby, remember? And so I did an access course. And when I finished, I had to make a decision what I wanted to do. And I was curious about the mind and how the mind worked. And maybe part of that was understanding my own mind, you know. So I chose to do a psychology degree, but nothing was easy sailing. No journey that I've had hasn't come without a struggle or a fight. So when I did my first psychology degree, I remember applying to Middlesex University and them telling me, "Oh, there's no places here. You have to go on a waiting list." And I was so disheartened, Ryan, because even getting to where I was to have done the access course, then I had to make sure that I did my O-level maths, because maths, I didn't get it at O-level. And I recall seeing my maths teacher, Miss Donahue, when I was 19 years old. And, you know, children always remember the faces of the teachers.
Mm.
So I saw Miss Donahue in Tottenham and I said, hello, Miss Donahue. And she said, hello. And she said, who are you? And I explained, well, she said, yeah, I remember you went to Tottenham County. I said, yes. And she said, I want you to know this. The school that you went to did not have the proper resources to teach you maths. We didn't have enough teachers. We didn't have enough books. We didn't have enough, you know, expertise to teach you. So if you did not get your O-level maths when you left school, please do not blame yourself. The provision was inadequate. Anyway, fast forward, I'd done all my things, and they said a waiting list. And one particular day, I just felt to go to a I kept on pursuing them. Now, those days, it wasn't emails. You had to phone them up, you know, or send a letter. And then that day, I decided to go for a walk, and I just walked into the telephone box under Tollington Park in Islington, and I made a phone call. When I made that phone call, they said, oh, I said, can I speak to the dean of the university for psychology? So, and they put me through, and he said, oh, there's an opening. Would you like to come down? If you come now, we can sign you up. Ryan, I never get on that 279 bus so fast. I run to Finsbury Park and jump on the bus. I went down there. I got there just before 2:30. See, I remember the time. And I signed my name. Then I went and I did my first degree in psychology.
Right.
That's when I had my daughter. When I finished psychology, there were three pathways. You could either do educational, clinical, or go into social work. Now, clinical, I couldn't stand the research methods. I needed to get my teeth into things. And also, maths wasn't I wouldn't even say it's not that I couldn't do it. It didn't excite me. So I knew I'd have to do that. And I didn't want to sit in a room with somebody and I'm a hands-on person. So educational psychology, you'd have to teach. And I'd already had my stint being a play worker, and I knew working with children was not going to bring out the best in me, because you had to have a high level of impatience. And there were so many embargoes on you to actually be creative as well. They wanted you to follow a really strict regime. So I knew that wasn't for me. So the other option was social work. And whilst I was financing myself through uni, I had worked for an agency cover, which was in Tottenham. And I'd done a few things doing working in the field of social work. So I thought, let me put my stint in that. And then again, when it was come for me to do my master's degree, they said, oh, you're on the waiting list, you know, but we don't know. And I had to then write to the dean of the university and say, listen, this is one of my only opportunities. I had a place which was outside of London, but it wasn't viable for me because I had a little child. So I pleaded with them. And within 24 hours, they phoned me up and said, oh, we've got a place. I said, has it got anything to do with the letter that I wrote? They said, no. This has just come up. So we thought that we could offer it to you.
Wow.
So every opportunity that I've had to create it and take it by force.
Wow.
Nothing has been given to me.
No.
Nothing has been given to me, you know. And I have a teacher that I had in a primary school, a black teacher. Her name was Miss Piggott, is Miss Piggott. I don't know whether she's still around. But I was about 10 years old in Stamford Hill Primary School, and Miss Piggott came to the school. Black, Caribbean teacher. We were all shocked. We'd never seen a black teacher before. We thought, anyway, here comes Mrs. Piggott. And she poured so much love in us. And she also left me with a poem, which has kept me going up to now. And it says, a rhyme, good, better, best, Never let it rest till your good is your better and your better is your best.
Wow. Wow.
So whenever I got to a stage where I thought this isn't working out, mate, I pull out all the stops in the bag
Yes.
to get me to where I'm going. So
Yes.
if the front door wasn't open, I was coming in the back door through the roof or through the side window. But I knew I was going to get my psychology degree and I knew I was going to get my master's degree, you
Ah,
know. And sometimes people have to hear that no doesn't mean the end, but you have to have a discernment as well. Because I love the words of Nina Simone, who was one of my favorite artists. I have all these women in my head who are my mentors. And she says, you have to learn to leave the table when love is no longer being served. You have to have that spirit of discernment where you know, yeah, I'm not going to say everybody should just walk out, but there's certain environments which are harmful and you have to leave. And that is what took me to leave the NHS after working there for 22 years. I had to learn to leave that table because love was no longer being served. They could see, and it's not that it had never been served there, but they've launched the workforce race equality standard in 2015 because they recognized that Black people were leaving there in droves. I was working in there, I'd long and sustained it, you know, you put up, you endure. And then it came to a point where I said, so far and no more. So that was a catalyst for me. So I say to people, stay if you can, if you want to make improvements and outcomes and all those different things. But at the same time, there must be something that runs parallel with that also, so that you have that discerning spirit at all times to know when it's too harmful for you to be able to remove yourself.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yes. Wow, words of wisdom. So at some point in your life, you became a counsellor.
Wherever I roam, Tottenham is always my home. This is where I was born and when I was raised. And it's phenomenal to be here in my position as a counsellor to celebrate.
So tell us about that.
Yes,
What led you to
right.
become a counsellor? What was that?
Oh, the counsellor position was bestowed upon me, to be honest with you. It's really peculiar how that happened. It was really organic and natural. It wasn't something that I went out thinking, yeah, I'm gonna be a politician. No way.
Mm,
I didn't even the first visual image I had of Black people in politics was 1987 when I was a teenager and I stood up in my living room. I said, "The Black people on the television," and not in a comedy show. We all came together in the living room and we stood in awe and watched Diane Abbott, Paul Boateng, and Bernie Grant walk into the Houses of Parliament. And that was a moment of deep connection that now Black people, especially Diane Abbott, who was first generation, like myself, born in Britain, walking into the Houses of Parliament, not as a singer, not as an entertainer, but as a politician, that was mind blowing. That was my first encounter. Then we had Bernie Grant in Tottenham, who was extremely close to the community. He was one of us, we were him. He was helping us. So he was a real, you know, person to me. So Bernie Grant would see us on the street and talk to us. He was very much like the big uncle and he always encouraged us. So that was very much the second thing of politics. However, I still felt that there was a major disconnect with the Black community and there still remains. Yes, we have few dots in the Houses of Parliament. We do have that now. Progress has been made. We are moving in the right direction. But at my time, it was 2015, when the workforce race equality standard was launched. Also, Jeremy Corbyn was in, and he had this chant: "Politics is for the many, not for the few." So I thought, all right then, let me sign up to. I've always voted Labour. Let me sign up to the Labour Party, and I went to a few meetings. I was in there, and I was very quiet at first. I didn't say much, and then I said one or two things on a few occasions. I voiced, you know, my impressions. And then there's a few times I'd said only a few things, and then a lady called Fiona English, who's part of the Labour Party in Tottenham, came to me and said, Michelle, you said a few things on a few times, and we're really interested, and they're really sound, knowledgeable things. If there's any positions come up within, our constituent, would you go for them? I was thinking, is someone talking about me? She's sure she's talking about me? Anyway, there was the BAME officer, Black and Ethnic Minority officer, that came up. So I went for that. Then I started to be more active in the community. I mean, really helping people, doing little talks, different things. And following on from that, the pandemic struck. And Ryan, that was a very difficult time for me, especially in regards to women who were experiencing domestic violence. Partners were spending more time with each other at home, and the terrain of abuse became prolific. And the defining moment for when I decided that I'd be a counsellor, because they'd whispered in my ear to do it before, that's when somebody came to my home, and a woman, and she had revealed she'd been abused. And I wanted to support her, and I had to call the police, because as a social worker, you have to, our mantra is first do no harm. And so I had to call the police, and I was in my living room, 3 a.m. in the morning, with this woman facilitating her care and to ensure that everything was in place for her. And I decided then that I needed to do something else so that I could serve my community and still be a mother. Because when she came in, I had to tell all my children, go upstairs, So it was about managing those, struggling, those two dichotomies. And I have no regrets. My sweetest, sweetest, sweetest thing about being a counsellor, an elected counsellor, is that it's in the ward where I was raised.
Wow.
And there are so many. The first one I went to was in Tottenham Hale, and I missed it by 1 vote. And then I came to stay. And when that happened, I spoke to my mum, and she always says the right thing. She said, Michelle, if this has not happened, God's got something better in store for you that's more unique and will be a better fit for what he's got in what the plan is. So I eased and I went for Seven Sisters Ward, where I was raised, where I grew up, where everybody knows me. And Ryan, I floored it. And the sweetest thing about there being in Seven Sisters Ward is all those women that poured into me, all the aunties, all the mothers, all the big sisters, all the big brothers. I can go and really help them. There's one lady, she's 85, her husband died, Black woman from the Windrush. She had some problems with planning to transfer the name, the property of her name into her daughter's, all of that. And I was able to do it so quickly. Just send a members' inquiry, somebody goes round, they help them out. And also the Windrush, the older generation, they're becoming more frail. A lot of them are dying, They seek advice, they want reassurance, they want somebody that they know that they can trust, and I am she. And it is it's like a gift, honestly. There's the other parts of it that you get into, like when they had the controversial LTNs, Lord Ryan, that day I had been in, then afterwards I put myself forward to be the chair of the Environment, Safety and Community panel. And so that was the inception of the LTNs was going to go live, the lower traffic neighborhoods. So I was going for my second meeting, and there was this big demonstration outside with placards, the police, cameras. Brian, my husband dropped me off. My little son was at the back. He said, Mommy, what's going on here? Who are all these people here for? My husband said, they're there for your mother. I said, and after he said, I wish you the best, the British, yeah? And he drove off, and I had to go into that meeting, Ryan. And I had to manage that situation.
Wow.
And when I went in, I had to calm the place. And another situation happened after that. because it had gone on for a few months, there was another situation which was another sweetness that happened, Ryan. Because the profile, everybody has their own confirmation bias. They do. I have it, you have it. And the confirmation bias I find in that situation often is, my face doesn't fit there. I'm not supposed to be there. I remember doing my AMP training as a social worker and going into hospital to detain people and going to police stations. And as soon as I work in there, they say, "Oh, you Tom's partner or you Gary's partner." And when I go to court, they'll say, "Can you go to the family gallery?" I said, "No, actually, I'm the professional and I'm not nobody's partner. I've come in to detain someone under the Mental Health Act." So there's all those confirmation biases that go on. Those biases that people have in their head, and they have to have internal interrogation to actually challenge them. Anyway, this time there was an incident in the one of the scrutiny panel meetings, and I had to stop it and call the police because someone tried to run in. So I had to take the cabinet back. I took the cabinet back inside for recess for us to come back out. So we come back out, and the police were there. Police walked over to the white man, thinking that he was the chair and he was in charge. And he said, oh, I've come here to help you. And the white man said, "No, it's not me, it's that woman over there." And I could see the police officer's face go red. And I was grinning. I thought, yes, you come and talk to me. I am the one in charge. So that was a sweet moment as well.
Yeah.
And a teachable moment, although we didn't have to say anything to each other. But I hope he took away from there that, we're not the cleaners anymore.
Yeah.
I remember being a social worker, first time going out doing my field work. I was an outreach social worker, working in the thick of King's Cross with drugs, violence, everything that there was, the isms and the schisms. I was there at the forefront of it. And I remember going to a day centre, and I walked in, and one of the the young man or young white man said to me, "Who are you then?" And I said, "Well, I'm the social worker." He said, "No, no, no, no. You must be the cook or the cleaner. You can't be the social worker." And I was just thinking, we're in the year 1998, not 68, not 58, no 48. We've arrived, and that has kind of been a prevailing theme. And it started off very young. I remember going to wanting my careers interview that you all do when you're 15 years old. And I said, "Oh, I want to be a dietitian." You see, I had always had influence in my life. I'd seen luxury. My mum, when she came over here, remember I told you about these two women, twins. They both had 11 children each, which is my grandaunt and my grandmother. My grandaunt was Jean Richardson. She was married to Senator Selwyn Richardson, who was in Trinidad, because my grandaunt had left my grandmother in St. Vincent, and she lived in Trinidad. So Senator Selwyn Richardson and his wife, Jean Richardson, used to come to Tottenham. And when they came there, they stayed to visit us. They would stay in the Intercontinental Hotel. So you'd have a Rolls Royce pulling up on Candler Street to see us in Tottenham.
Right.
And I'd seen what education can do. So when I rolled up at my careers interview, I was not just exposed to my mum being a post office worker and my father being a policeman. I'd seen people of my mother's generation who were who had completed university, who had jobs, who were driving Rolls Royces to come and visit us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So when I said I wanted to be a dietitian, which was what my aunt was, they said, "Oh, no, 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 no. You have to go to university for that." They gave me a prospectus to be a petrol station attendant.
Right.
Well, I took that home to Mrs. Simmons. That didn't bode well with her. She went down to the school and she give them money and change. And they said, okay, we hear you, Miss Simmons, we hear you. And what happened? They upgraded me to hairdresser.
Wow.
When they upgraded me to hairdresser, my mum said, Michelle, it's not what they say about you, it's what you say about you.
Yeah.
I believe beyond the shadow of a doubt that you are able. Put your shoulder to the wheel and push. So, in essence, underestimation and its damage that it has done to many people, that there's many talents in the graveyard, Ryan, that have never been able to be birthed because of institutional racism. Because
The term institutional racism was not written about in the first edition of my book, Race Relations and Employment Law, put simply in black and white. However, since its publication, the term has been in the headlines for a variety of reasons. In fact, just a few days before the planned publication of the second edition, a senior nurse who was employed by NHS England and NHS Improvement Commissioning as a continuing healthcare manager won her case of, amongst other things, discrimination because of race and harassment related to race, and reportedly said, it sadly proves that institutional racism is still present in organisations, despite the efforts to make it more inclusive for people of all races and backgrounds.
Because of people dictating to you what you should be, what their bias fits, and then you just go along with it. You know, some people have not got the agency or the impetus to push back and say, no way, mate. You know, without a trial, there's never a failure. I'm going to try it. And if it don't work, fair enough, then I try something else. But you're not going to demean me to the lowest common denominator that I myself start believing your lies. So I did go on to university and I went on and I did my master's degree.
So I'm going to end where it began, but I need to ask you where this skill and talent came from. I'm going to ask you, not just yet, going to ask you to read a poem that's called Windrush Child. But before you get to that,
Yes.
where did this talent and skill come from to be a poet? When did you first realize that you had this ability to pen these lovely verses?
I was, from a child, Ryan, I always liked to write. I was intrigued by literature. And when I got older, in schools, I would see poetry and poems like Shakespeare, Macbeth, but none of them were like me. Didn't get exposed to anybody that looked like me. So I just thought, I'm learning this as a chore. I'm learning it to pass an exam. I like the rhyme and the rhythm of some of the words. Like in Romeo and Juliet, there was but soft what light through yonder window breaks. It is the east and Juliet is the sun. Arise, dear sun, and kill the envious moon. So all of that was there. The poetry, the poems, the ability to rhyme the words for it to mean something. But then when I got to sixth form, I had the beautiful experience. Islington Sixth Form Centre, they invited Jean Binter Breeze, who was a dub poet. And she came with her drum and she started to beat the drum
Wow.
and say the poetry to us. And automatically, I identified and I was given permission to write. And I wrote nothing really but it was about an expression of self. And I was able to put pen to paper, which was quite cathartic. And at that young age, 18, 19, I'd write different things. When I had difficulties in my journey, I'd write different things for me to reflect on. But where the real burst of it came was working within the NHS, where I had to write to contain my own self. So one of the first ones that I wrote was, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, part of it just looks, when I look in the mirror, what do I see? I see a black woman staring back at me, full of potential, full of drive. who's been stifled from a good guide for a good while. Uh, uh, all of that came into me when I was beating up against the glass ceiling. Nothing was shifting. A narrative that was being pushed that wasn't my own narrative. So then I started to write more. Then it became a bit more stagnant. And when I really started to I named myself the political poet, was when I started to really write about controversial issues. And within it, I do it in a way that is able to people can hear me. So people can hear me. It's cathartic. People can hear me and people can identify. Not having, as I said to you before, I touched on, having a really compassionate and understanding manager means that a lot of my emotions is not spent on combating racism. So all my creative juices can go into create material that will inspire and infuse the next generation. And I wrote Windrush Child this year as the sequel to Bound for Britain, because I thought to myself, how are we going to chart as a first generation our experiences in Britain? So that's real, tangible, and we can come to a time to really just celebrate us. I've also seen other poets like Benjamin Zephaniah, who was amazing, He
Yes.
talked about real issues and I really identified with him because, and the thing is, my poetry just comes, Ryan. I don't sit down there for a long period of time. Bound for Britain was written in all of 45 minutes
Wow. Wow.
because I just had to interview my mum. I'd done the first bit of it because I knew, and I interviewed her, and then I just sat down there and I wrote it. I haven't got much time. I've got 4 children, 2 grandchildren, one husband. I'm a counselor. So sometimes I'm in the car. The one when I wrote, you underestimated me. I just get a wave, and then I have a lot of pen and paper with me. And I
Right.
just quickly just jot them down, jot them down, jot them down, and then afterwards I go back and write them out properly. So that's how
Wow.
it comes. I think it
Right.
is a God-given talent. It's
Yes.
nothing that I didn't study for it, Ryan. I didn't
Mm.
study for it at all. And that's why I say that I believe it's genetic. Because when I had my cousin in after I'd done my ancestry, then I found some of my other cousins who are Vincentian and they've charted our family tree. And when I look on there, there's preachers and teachers, preachers and teachers, preachers and teachers. So I think that a lot of it is inherent in your makeup and being given the space and the headspace to be able to do it, to birth them. That's why it's coming. And I'm really happy about it, Ryan, because I've even written about my son when they were. I have one son. I have 4 children, and one of my sons, who's 15, has autism, and they were also putting limitations on him. And I wrote um, poem to celebrate the Markfield project, which works with children with special needs.
Right.
And it was a non-judgmental place. And I wrote that and I gave it to them, to say thank you. So some of my poetry is gifts, some
Yes.
of them are political, and
Yes.
some of them is to chart history.
Right. 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 So what we had as we conclude this, yeah, Bound for Britain, we had the person like my mother, who was born in Grenada, and she went on that boat and she told me about her story that when she landed in Southampton, she stopped off in Italy, landed in Southampton,
Wow.
lived in Shepherd's Bush. So you've catalogued that journey for me. So for us. So thank you very much.
Yes.
Vincent, I've been there as well, just across the water. So I've been
Oh,
in St. Vincent, Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. So we've got that. So we've got our parents' generation. They land in the UK. They've had
yeah.
children. So now we're going to hear the poem that tells us of the Windrush child. So the floor is
Yes.
yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Windrush child, Windrush child, where will you abide? Your parents arrived on the Windrush tide. They took big risks. They had big lists. They perceived opportunities that could not be missed. Their dreams intact despite the burdens on their backs. Your parents left the Caribbean shores, searching for new opportunities to open new doors. They arrived in the motherland, often with a 5-year plan, only to witness their precious dreams slipping through their fingers like Caribbean golden sand. Windrush child, you were forced to grow up fast. Your parents often had to work 2 jobs for the food on the table to last. While they worked, you had to do your part. Zaflora and Dettol in buckets to clean. Polish the cabinet full of glass and china so it would gleam. Dragging the shopping trolley through the markets and the shops. Making sure all the produce would not drop. Following your parents through the market stalls, vexed like hell when they paused to chitter-chatter and knitter-natter, buying their food from Caribbean shores. Yam and banana, plantain and cassava, saltfish and guava. Dashing to Dashway when it was not good. Breadfruit in the shopping basket, all cassava stood. You watched as they examined the produce with their labored hands to ensure your heritage would forever stand, and you could pass it on to the next generation in this foreign land. Windrush child, you were born in Britain, but you often wonder, what is your position? English, they shout when you return on Caribbean soil. Go back where you come from, you hear, in Britain where your parents toiled. Where you fit in is a constant struggle within. Windrush child, the stories you heard as a child will forever be solidified in your mind. Tales of moonlight nights and village life, the mountains and the Caribbean Sea, and the beauty of simplicity is part of your legacy. Windrush child, as you grew up, the bright lights enticed. You sneaked out on a Saturday night to dance till daylight. As the sound system played, you were in a daze. The music you created can never be dated, from lovers rock to dancing on the block. You created your own fun and it still can't done. Saturday church service awaited when you returned home. Your worship was not assigned to the DJs alone. Your parents' Christian faith was never a debate. Their hope was built on nothing less than Jesus Christ and righteousness. Wondrous child, your parents' desire was not only for you to survive, but to thrive. They did not realize at the time that the racist system will affect their decisions, even though you were born in Britain. So Saturday and supplementary schools were given. They would not accept the labels that were driven of the educationally subnormal child. Your parents had to organize and strategize to make a provision to ensure you were risen. Windrush child, as you entered the employment system, the 60s placards, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, had disappeared, but racism still glared. You had limited opportunities. Even though you were qualified to the hilt, the pendulum would not tilt. So you became entrepreneurs and businesses you built. Just when you thought you were at rest, a hostile environment policy came into effect, and the Windrush child they began to detest. The government thought it was not your right to live in Britain. You needed the correct papers to secure your position. You had to revoke the policy, which was not right. Eventually, the government conceded, The Home Office had shown ignorance and thoughtlessness, complete disregard for the Windrush generation, as our parents had been invited to build the British nation. Windrush child, you are now all grown. You have children and grandchildren of your own. The Caribbean culture you have sustained in future generations, it will remain and reign. Windrush child, I celebrate you. I am you and you are me. You have tenacity in your genealogy. You have made a significant, magnificent contribution to British society. You have left an everlasting legacy. You must now write your own history. Your journey must not be a mystery. You must not be erased from history with trickery. You must control the destiny of your legacy. Windrush child, I salute you.
Wow, wow, what a fitting ending. Well done, well done. Again, with a tickly throat as well.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. You know, Michelle, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much. I know that tickly throat of yours, it could not have been,
Yes,
but we made it. We got there. We got there.
yes.
So you know,
And
social
it was the
worker,
tickly throat makes it authentic as well.
it
So you know
does.
this ain't staged. Yeah, it's
Precisely,
not staged.
precisely.
I
Indeed.
spoke from my belly and I spoke from my heart.
Yes.
And I pray that whatever I said here, that if it can encourage somebody and give them, if you put some guide along the way, then it's a job well done. And
Absolutely.
thank you,
It
Ryan,
will
for
do.
having me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your journey. Social worker, counselor, and poet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And we shall see
Thank
the
you, Ryan.
part 2 to come.
Yes,
A
part two,
hard-hitting
where
part
the
2.
political poet will really get.
Oh my goodness me. I look forward to that one.
Yes.
Take care. And thank you very much, Michelle.
All right then.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Ryan.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
So our history in this country did not begin with the Windrush children. It is a history that goes back 400 years. And you cannot colonize people, make them your subjects, and then